Today, I'll be welcoming back Keith and Kenny Lucas to the show. You've probably seen them on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon or the hilarious Netflix stand-up special on drugs. Today, we're here to talk about the new film that they co-wrote and co-produced, Judas and the Black Messiah. The film is amazing. I'm so excited for this project. Thank you guys for coming in.
Oh man, thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here.
Absolutely, man. Thank you.
How have you guys been surviving COVID and government insurrections and $600 stimulus checks and all of these crazy things that are happening in the world?
I think I've been watching a lot of TV. I've been trying to read more, trying to write, just like keep my mind sort of focused. But yeah, it's been a challenge.
Yeah, it's been a weird few. This last year, it's been crazy. I mean, even the beginning of this year, it's been crazy with the storming of the Capitol. It's just, and COVID. It's just like it's a lot of shit happening. But ultimately, it's like I read a lot of philosophy to keep my mind sort of, settled and like, we're gonna go through turbulent times. But I think you just have to like power through it all. But it's been crazy.
Sounds weird, but I just feel like the end is coming. Like I feel like we're about to get out of this. And I'm not an optimistic person at all. Like I always spend my time looking for I choose violence a lot. So I'm really thinking, but I feel like we're gonna reach the end of this soon. And I think one thing that is making it easier is great content, great film. So I just want to say congratulations on the film. You guys are going to educate a whole generation of people. So let's just talk about how'd you choose this particular project?
I mean, it goes back to about like 2014. We had already been sort of familiar with Fred Hampton from college. And once we got into the industry, one of our primary goals was to get a film made about him because we felt like, he was such a pivotal sort of historical figure during a transition from the civil rights movement to, mass incarceration. We had that period. And I feel like he was a big factor in that, but he was sort of like pushed to the margins. And we were like, well, why hasn't there been a film that allows for him to reach his message to reach a national, international audience? So our goal was always to do that. So in 2014, we started coming up with ways in which we could sort of,
figure out a way to, shape the story into to a film. And we started doing a bunch of research. We read this book, The Assassination of Fred Hampton.
Right.
We read this book, Black Against Empire. We started watching a bunch of his speeches and, just trying to like really like absorb who he was to get a fuller picture of like who Fred Hampton was, because you hear a lot about the death, but you don't really hear about how he lived. Like this, at a young age, he was organizing. He got people. He brought people together. He was a pivotal force in the NAACP before he transitioned into the Black Panther.
Right.
So this was a guy who, at a very young age, knew what he wanted to do. He was a fully formed activist, and we just wanted again to get a fuller picture of who he was. But as we did research, we also found out about William O'Neill, the guy who, infiltrated the Black Panthers and, helped the FBI execute him essentially. And we were reading about his story, and there wasn't a lot of information on William O'Neill, but we were just like, it could be an interesting film if we came from his perspective, because first and foremost, no one would expect that. And secondly, it's a thriller. It instantly becomes a crime thriller, which is more of a genre film. So we thought, well, perhaps we could use that as a genre, but also tell a more complete picture of Fred Hampton. Right. And that's when we pieced together a story idea and went around town pitching it to various studios and production companies.
Right. And we didn't get any offers initially, but then we hooked up with Shaka in 2016. And we felt like he was a filmmaker that could help elevate our story to, cinematic relevance. And so talking to Shaka and seeing what his mind was like and what his interests were, and like his background in film.
Yeah, he's a student of 70s cinema, especially the crime thrillers. And we just kind of nerded out on all of those films, you know, The Conformist, Serpico, Dog Day Afternoon, a lot of Lumet stuff. And just started we were like, oh man, he has a similar interest in 70s cinema like we do.
Right.
So he could bring his expertise along with his knowledge on 70s cinema to help us shape this into a film.
You know, like when I was a kid, we didn't learn anything in school about, we wouldn't learn anything about the Black Panthers, nothing about Malcolm X. Like we got none of these things. And I was born in the 80s and raised in the 90s. And like we got, there was this thing called slavery that was a real long time ago. So we're not going to lock in on that. And then all of a sudden, Dr. King had marched and then Michael Jackson's here. So you're good. Right? That's what we got. So, you know, it wasn't until Spike Lee made X that, you know, we really learned about Malcolm X, which is so crazy now because Malcolm X is such a household name. But I remember back in the day when the self-destruction video had dropped and they had that big Malcolm X mural on the wall. And I'm asking my older cousin, like, yo, who's that guy? And he had to break it down for me. So I feel like you guys are going to do the same thing, or you guys actually accomplished the same thing with telling the story of Fred Hampton because people really, really, really need to know. My question is, what special things did you pick up from that era or that time period, or just in general about him or William O'Neill that maybe didn't make it into the film, or that you guys didn't really know until you started your process doing research and everything?
Yeah, I mean, there was actually a recent there was a recent dump of FBI material that was uncovered by, I think it was a Yale historian, I believe. And it basically confirmed that Hoover and his third in command, William Sullivan, conspired with Roy Mitchell and William O'Neill to assassinate Fred Hampton. Like, there's direct evidence. And so we didn't have that information before we wrote the movie. I would have loved to have that piece of information because I think we could have, told an even more accurate sort of description of what happened. So that piece of information kind of sucks.
Yeah, and I feel like I wish we could have delved more deeply into Hampton's initial phase with the NAACP and how he transitioned into Black radicalism. Right. I think that's an interesting story to tell too. Like, what was his thinking behind switching from the more moderate NAACP to the more radical Black Panthers?
Right.
I know he was young and Dr. King had just died. And so perhaps that kind of shaped his decision to be like, this NAACP stuff isn't working. We need to be a bit more radical in our approach. But I feel like, in my research, learning that, I didn't know he was a part of the NAACP. I just assumed based on I just thought he was a Panther. So learning that was interesting. And with Will O'Neill, he was an informant for a very long time. Like even after the assassination of Fred Hampton, he remained an informant. So I wonder, I always wondered, like, what was that like too? Like, who else was he informant against? Like, who else did this nigga bring down? Like,
yo, he's a terrible person.
He's
he's just a terrible
awful person, man. But very but relatable. Like, I mean, I always say, like, what would I have done in that situation? Like, what would I have done if I was like, if the state was like, you got, you can either go to prison or you can infiltrate the Panthers. I'm like, would I choose prison or would I do what they wanted me to do?
Just put it this way: as we delve more deeply into COINTELPRO and the quote unquote ghetto informant program, which they called it, there were way more Black people snitching on people than people like Fred Hampton. You know what I mean? Like, Fred Hampton is a generational type of person, but if you do the research, there were over 5,000 members in the ghetto informant program. There were a lot of African Americans snitching on other African Americans. Right?
It's funny. Like, I'm from Baltimore, and I live in Baltimore, and there was a DVD that came out of Baltimore called "Stop Snitching." Went viral, went all over the place. And
Mel Anthony was in it, right? Yeah.
The biggest myth is nobody snitches, because now, that DVD probably came out about maybe 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. and at least 75% of the people that's on that DVD made statements. Like, so everybody, it's a weird stat, but like I was watching it with one of my friends not too long ago, and I was like, oh, wait a second. He told, his grandmother told. Like, I was just like, this, so like the fact that you saying so many people in the program is just, it's mind blowing. Can you guys talk a little bit about creating together as a unit? Because, as an author, I don't have to work with anybody until I submit my work to whoever my editor is, right? Right. She looks at my book and she says, I don't like this, that, and she sends it back. And I tell her, I don't care, keep it in there. And then we go publish, right? But you guys have to really get down and be in a writer's room or co-write or co-create. What is that process like?
I mean, I think the process that we have, it's been 10 years in the making, but I think we've reached a level of like just comfort with one another where we can generate ideas, we can tag team them, or we can go off and work on them separately, come back together and just sort of flesh it out. Like, I think we have a very good working relationship.
Yeah, we truly believe in the art of collaboration. And I think it's in large part because we grew up as twins. Right. We've always had to share. We've always had to like work. I've always had to work with him in everything that I've done. So it's like, it was like natural for me to just be okay with collaborating with others. Mm-hmm. I try to give, creators a space to do their own thing. He gives me my space to do my own thing. Right. And our belief is like, we got to do what's best for the project. Right. Any project that we're in, we want to do what's best for it. We want to make it the best version that it can be. And so when we collaborated with Will and Shaka, our thought was like, what's going to put this movie in the best position to be the best movie it can be. Right. And when you look at the reviews and you look at how people are responding to it, I think that, that means our instincts were correct, because I think collaboration is the key.
Yeah. And I think it's important, like, you can't have an ego, you know what I mean? Like, so much goes into making a film that if you have an ego, it could, usurp the efficiency of the process. I think that ultimately you have to put the art first. You have to put the subject matter first, and
especially with Fred Hampton, like you don't want to be the motherfuckers who fucked up his movie. Like
during Black History Month. You don't want to be the motherfuckers that fucked up a Fred Hampton movie during Black History Month. Like, you don't want to be those guys.
So it's extra pressure. So that's why we were very, very cautious with how we went about in terms of making it, and it was important for us to find the right collaborators. And Shaka and Will, they were flawless collaborators.
The whole team too. I just think even the way like the way you guys, like, the cast is just brilliant. Like, it's so good. One of you guys had mentioned the new FBI documents that recently came out, talking about the FBI's involvement, and there's a bigger piece to your art, to the story that I think we need to think about as a nation. There's still a whole lot of people who think the FBI are kind of here to like help everybody. And I think you guys are doing a great job at deconstructing that narrative. How do we challenge that FBI, that CIA, that police narrative? Because I still think a lot of people just don't understand that they're capable of doing what they did to Fred Hampton. Or how they stalked Dr. King and Malcolm X and everything else.
I want to stay for the record. We're not criticizing the CIA and its current iteration, so don't bug us or anything like that. But no, I think we, as African Americans and as citizens of this country, I don't think we've ever fully reckoned with what the FBI and the intelligence community did to Black activists in the 1960s. When we talk about reparations, we always go back to slavery, and we're like, oh, America was terrible to African Americans during slavery. We need to, fix it. Or we go to the Jim Crow segregation. America was terrible to Black people. But I'm like, this COINTELPRO shit was even more insidious, because it was like the federal resources were used to essentially target Black activists, harass them, spy on them, encroach on their basic civil liberties, and in some cases execute them. And I'm like, this is now we're talking about USSR type shit. We're talking about like police state, modern sort of fascism, just sort of encroaching on Black individuals. And I'm like, and then you see mass incarceration, and I believe that mass incarceration is a direct relative to COINTELPRO, where you're criminalizing Black activities, even if they're legal. now you have this sort of massive apparatus that's sort of criminalizing all Black activities. And I think that until we sort of speak about the birth of COINTELPRO and what happened and how it happened, we're going to ignore it and pretend like it never existed.
Right. And I think a way to, combat that narrative is that we need to tell more of these stories. And I think this is just the tip of the iceberg with the Fred Hampton story. I mean, there's still some stuff that went down with Dr. King that I think needs to be told.
Yeah.
You have the Oakland chapter of the Black Panthers, Angela Davis, who was harassed. I mean, there were so many of our people.
And it wasn't even just African Americans who were harassed under COINTELPRO. You had white radical liberals, musicians, actors. I mean, it was an entire sort of government program.
Right. And we got to tell them we need more of these stories to come out. We need studios to take chances on telling these stories, and we gotta market them as much as we can. And I think, again, this is just a start, but hopefully, this will break open the ice and more people will feel compelled to write more stories about it.
It's a great story, and I see you guys repping Newark. Any stories coming out of Newark?
Man, Newark is a fascinating place. I mean, you're from Baltimore, so you understand the Rust Belt cities post industrial. It's one of those cities where there's so many compelling stories that we're trying to tell our own story. Which, we tell our story. We're telling the story of Newark. Our father went to prison in 1993.
Yeah.
And he was heavily involved in the drug game in Newark. And, but that's just one side of Newark. You still have political corruption. You have mob activity. Mm-hmm. You have lawyers who are extremely corrupt. I mean, there's just so much high level corruption in Newark that it
lends itself to
storytelling. So we're actually working on a TV show that will hopefully tackle a lot of these issues in Newark, and we'll see what happens. But it's just so much that goes down there.
That corruption is so bad in Baltimore that I couldn't even do a drama. It can only be comedy.
Right. For real though. It's like, it's so comedic, man. Right. It's like the high level corruption. It's like, it's so surreal that like, you can't even make it too dramatic. Right. It's just like, it's comedy of errors.
Right.
Speaking of comedy, any more stand-ups coming?
On Drugs
was brilliant. Like I just got a chance to rewatch it in preparation for this now, because I haven't seen it since like I think it came out 2017. It's been a minute. Right. It's been a minute, but anything else coming up?
Yeah, I mean, we're always sort of tinkering with the idea of doing another special. I think we just have to make sure we have the right material, and we got to get on the road. I mean, like it's hard to get on the road now, but we need to get back and hit hard.
Yeah, right before COVID, we were going really hard. Like we would do weekends. We were at the Cellar almost every night, and I felt like we were in good shape to release another special. But then COVID hit, and then we just. I haven't been on stage in months. So It's like, I would need to really spend a year on the road, just like making sure the material is where it needs to be. So I would say but
we do have a lot to talk about with this Judas experience. There's a lot of comedy in it, even though it's like so serious, it's very funny. So I think,
the production, dealing with, studios, and it's a crazy experience. That we would love to talk about on stage.
I bet, we get to see the finished product, but we don't really get to see everything that goes into making these products, the weird personalities and the scamming manager.
Right.
You guys are lawyers. You don't got to worry about that.
Yeah, that's what's crazy, man. It's like, people see the finished product, but it's like, we were there from the inception of the idea up until now. So it's like, we've seen the whole thing, and it's like, it's eye-opening just going through this whole process and dealing with financiers and dealing with major studios and pitching it around town and dealing with the, on set.
Are dealing with like Twitter activists who are like already anti the movie because we have Daniel Kaluuya in there as he's a British guy. And so they're just like, it's so funny to have to see like these subsections on Twitter debate this stuff, and it's like, but the film's great, but it doesn't matter.
But Twitter activism is the highest level of education. Like if you can make it to be a Twitter activist, it's kind of like Oxford.
That's very true. That's very true. See, I didn't see it like that, but now I do.
These guys know their stuff. Like they get it.
Right.
Like, you know. Yeah.
Right. I never want to get into conflict with them.
Oh my God, no! I've had my bouts with them. I'm not woke. I'm sleep. When it comes to whatever the stuff they talking about, I don't know what they're talking about.
Right.
You can't even get into it. Oh, go ahead.
The weird thing is that a lot of people with these big online personalities, like they have these heavy opinions and these critiques and the way they feel about the world, but one, they're not creating, and then two, when they meet you, they want to be your best friend. So it's just like, it's all strange. It's like a weird reality.
Yeah, that's what I hate. It's like your hands aren't in the dirt. You don't know what it's like to be on the other side trying to create this stuff. Like the work we have to put into to make a Fred Hampton story. Like there's so much. There are so many obstacles, and it's like they don't care. They just think that we have a blank check and we can do whatever we want, but that's not how it works. But there's a lot of
Well, you have people who live in the real world, and then you have people who tweet. I think there's just sort of a dichotomy between, because the internet's not reality. It's a distortion, and so sometimes you feel like what you're doing on the internet actually comports to reality, and then oftentimes it doesn't. So.
Right.
Can you guys speak to the Revenge of the Nerds reboot?
Yeah, we're writing the script. It's been fun. It's definitely not Judas and the Black Messiah. It's a totally different story, but it's been fun. We're just working with our co-writer, getting the script ready, and hopefully we're looking to get into production by the summer. Yeah, but with COVID, it's tough to be like, yeah, we're going to be filming in the summer. I want to make sure this thing is calmed down.
Yeah, it's like it's always good to be able to just have some fun with it, because some of that heavy stuff can just
yeah, for sure.
But we need the heavy stuff. Again, I want to say thank you guys for coming on. Judas and the Black Messiah is brilliant. Can you tell everybody when it comes out and where they can catch it?
Right. Yeah. Right. We're coming out February 12th, HBO Max and in theaters. It'll be everywhere, so go watch it.
Yeah, please watch it. And also, after you're done watching it, go read up on Fred Hampton. He's a brilliant, brilliant man, and his legacy and his message deserves to be widely known.